Thanks so much, Janine. Really appreciate you lead us in prayer. As Ben mentioned, after the service today, we will be having kind of a church forum. If you've never been along to one of these, it's one of the ways that we try to communicate things that are happening in the life of the church. It should go for about 30 minutes, 25, 30 minutes. Any more than that, you need to kind of boo me off or something like that, or get one of the musos to start playing and things. So what actually will happen is that after the service, there'll be kind of like a 5-minute break. You want to get a coffee or something like that. Welcome to come back in here. And it's more of a conversation type format to see what's going on in the life of the church community. Also on November the 24th at our Thanksgiving service, we're going to be doing a presentation to Matt Moran. As you would have known if you've been here over the past month, Matt is finishing up his formal role here at Croydon Hills Baptist Church, and we think it would be fantastic for people to be able to express their gratitude in all sorts of ways. I know that I'm incredibly thankful for the 10 years that I've shared with Matt, and so over this next couple of weeks, there's going to be a couple of things. At the welcome desk, there's going to be like one of those book type things for people to write and things, and I think at some point, oh, there we go. Look at that timing. There's a QR code, so if you are comfortable with the QR code, you can just take a picture of that and shoot it through. And if you want to write a message, I'm sure that Matt would greatly appreciate that. Sometimes you can buy gifts that are nice, but messages actually convey far more. And so we want to invite as many people as possible to do that, and that would be wonderful. A few months ago, I heard a joke that caused me to chuckle and also caused me to have a little bit of pain. You ever heard those types of jokes? I think this is how it goes. I'm not very good at telling jokes, as my family would attest, but it goes something like this. Which was the greater miracle? That Jesus was raised from the dead, or that a 33-year-old man had 12 male friends? Now you know why I felt both of those things. Every time I have told that joke to a bloke who's kind of 33 and up, they've nodded their head. Every time. In our popular culture, you can observe the shift towards friendship as a significant part of our community and lives. In the 1970s, if you're old enough to remember, 1960s, 1970s, in fact, the first part of the 1980s, TV shows were centred around families. You could watch The Brady Bunch, you could watch All in the Family, you could watch, well, you wouldn't watch The Cosby Show anymore, you could watch The Sullivans. But then in the 1980s, it began to shift. So the most popular show of the second half of the 1980s was Cheers, a song about friends in a bar. The 1990s were dominated by Seinfeld, for people who spent their lives doing nothing but weren't related, and Friends, which still goes to this day. There's this shift from families to friends as the centre of community life. Pop culture reflected that in very real ways. But I've got to say, in many things, it's not a completely recent phenomena. In fact, in 1624, John Donne, the English poet, famously penned these words: "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main." His point was that we need other people to flourish in life. We don't exist just by ourselves, because it's true, isn't it, that we all need friends. One professor of psychiatry, Jacqueline Olds, who's at Harvard Medical School, and she authored a book called The Lonely American, Drifting Apart in the 21st Century, had this to say. And as much as it says Americans, it's true equally of Australians, I would suggest to you. Americans are more isolated and lonely than ever before, despite having seemingly endless ways to stay in touch through communications technology and social media. Most of us don't know our neighbours. We frequently change jobs and move, often leaving extended family and friends behind. We feel guilty just talking on the phone with a friend when we could be working. Ours is a very transient, fast-moving culture where it's so easy, all too easy, to become socially disconnected. And that statement is reflected in all the research that is told. Here's 3 little surveys that have been researched over the past 15 years. In 2010, in one survey of retired persons, 35% of adults older than 45 indicated that they were chronically lonely. That was in 2010. The survey, when it was held 10 years earlier, only 20% said that they were chronically lonely. In 2013, one psychologist, John Capioccio, reported that 40% of adults were lonely, up from the previous surveys in the 1980s of 20%, double the amount of people. In 2023, a Gallup poll reported that 17% of adults, nearly a quarter of adults under the age of 30, were actually said that they were lonely the day before they answered the survey. Again and again, we see this loneliness in our society. Widespread, painful, damaging. Why? Because we recognise that all of us as humans, to flourish, we need relationships, don't we? Because humans were designed by a relational God for relationships. The Bible describes a God, the God that we worship, that exists in this perfect relationship, Father, Son, and Spirit. This relationship of love and unity. And we are made in the image of God, made for relationships, the same as God is a relational God. In fact, you can read in the early parts of the Bible in Genesis 2 how God recognizes that it's not good to be alone. Why? Because we are made for relationships. From our earliest moments, our friends impact our lives, our attitudes, our behaviour. It's an essential part of life, isn't it? An essential part. And I suspect that as I kind of share that brief introduction with you today, that I won't get any argument from people about the importance of friendships. I'm not sure that I'm going to get people going, no, I think you're wrong, Andrew. I don't need friends at all. But I want to take a few bit of time today to kind of drill a little bit more into that. And I want to ask you this question. Do you think there's a difference between a Christian friendship and one that is not centered on Jesus? When I seek to reflect on that question, I answer this way. I said, I think no and yes. No and yes. Because friendship is an essential part of what it is to be human, isn't it? It doesn't matter whether we're a person of faith or not. We're all made in the image of God, all have needs for friendship. And I think that God in his graciousness, in his generosity, gives friendship the opportunity for people, irrespective of whether they follow him or not. I think you probably know, as I do, people who are great friends who aren't people of faith. And so I think that's possible to have that. But I also suspect a little bit of yes. A little bit of yes. The church is an unusual institution. A licorice all sorts, you could say. There are people from all places, from all walks of life who gather. In this church community here, between our different services, on any Sunday, there's probably 400 to 500 people. There's probably the best part of 1,000 people who would say this is their church home. They are from all different ages, all different backgrounds, many different nationalities, different education, different experiences, different socioeconomic, different likes and dislikes, but all called to unite and to love each other. In fact, it's one of the few communities in our world today, in our Western world, that exists which has such a diversity of people. Sociologists reckon that one of the reasons that we see so much fracturing happen in our society these days is the fact that there are not the places where people come from all sorts of different places to gather anymore. Now, we tend just simply to gather with those who are just like us, our age group, our socioeconomic, our experiences, our likes and dislikes. And so what we become is people who live in our own little enclave. We participate in social media with our own people. We live in echo chambers that just repeat the same things again and again to us, which is from our perspective. The church is actually not like that at all, because we're such a diversity of people. But I think there's even another reason why, when I think of friendship and with regards to churches, that the answer is a little bit yes. Because I feel like that the hope that we have in a church is that we will find good relationships. I think we have this hope and this expectation that we won't feel alone. It's meant to be a place of love and community. And so if I do feel alone, it probably feels a little bit sadder if that's the case. Think of how the Bible describes friendship in so many different ways. I think for me, the starting point from a biblical perspective is that friendship begins with sacrificial love. I think this is the platform for friendship, sacrificial love. Jesus, in an amazing chapter in John chapter 15, describes friendship in a variety of different ways. He says, first of all, it demands this type of love. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. I find it fascinating that he doesn't say there is no greater love than a parent lays down their life for their child, or a husband lay down his life for his wife. He attributes this magnificent display of love to friendship, not to biological relationship, to family, not to romantic love, but to friendship. Goes on, I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends. It's like, here's the platform of love, and now I'm taking up at a next level. You're not this. In fact, what you are is this. You're friends. And keep going. This is my command, love each other. This is a platform for what it is to be a friend. You think about what a friendship that is built on sacrificial love then starts to kind of explore, like how it develops from that. If I asked you, well, sacrificial love is kind of like a central idea, a central concept, what are the practical applications of that? I bet you could come up with all sorts of expressions of it. Here's a few that I want to share with you. First of all, I would say that sacrificial love allows friends to be able to forgive one another. And the reason that I start here is because I think that real friendship, a deeper friendship, begins when someone needs to be forgiven. When someone needs to be forgiven. So if I'm kind of casual acquaintances with you or whatever, and we're just enjoying life together and stuff like that, our relationship, our friendship is kind of a certain level. But when someone does the wrong thing, when someone breaks their promise, someone lets you down, if there's forgiveness that happens, it takes the relationship to a new level. Do you see that? If someone forgives you, or if you're able to forgive someone, it says that our friendship can survive problems. It can survive struggles. It can survive the inevitable failure, because we're all humans and we're all going to fail at some point in time. So when I stuff it up, our friendship will keep on going. Forgiveness makes each other vulnerable in that relationship. We're going to tap into a few Proverbs today, and in Proverbs 17 it says that love prospers when a fault is forgiven. Love prospers. The contrast is dwelling on it separates. That's true, isn't it? Friendships need forgiveness. And I want to keep going, because I also want to say that I think that sacrificial love means that friendships are able to celebrate the success of each other. When Paul writes in Romans 12, he writes these words in verse 15, "Be happy with those who are happy." Be happy with those who are happy. Many times in our dog-eat-dog world, we find ourselves competing with other people, sinking to kind of jealousy and envy. Why isn't that happening to me? Why is things going well in their lives? But friends are able to celebrate the success of another person, aren't they? It takes humility to do that. It takes generosity, even if it means being outshined by them, that you can celebrate how good they're going. The contrast, of course, is in our world today where we curate our images on social media to show how good our lives are. It's like a way of trying to one-up everybody. But true friendship celebrates their success. We applaud it. You know what? Your kid is doing fantastic. That is excellent. I don't feel the need for my kid to compete with your kid to see who's better. Friendships explore that and celebrate it. I think the most celebrated friendship in the Old Testament is between David and Jonathan. You can read about this friendship, in particular through the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. Two quite well-known figures. Jonathan is the son of the king. Saul is the king. But we read that David is now chosen by God to replace Saul as king. Can you imagine how that must have felt to Jonathan in a sense, caught in this strange position where his father is king, but here's another guy who is his friend who shall replace him? In my head, I ask this question, why didn't Jonathan even ask, well, wait a sec, what about me? Shouldn't I be king? But Jonathan is able to celebrate his success again and again. Can't have been easy, but he does. And he moves, I think, their friendship into another category that for all of us, we would say this is truly one of the statements of friendship, that real friends endure, don't they? Real friends persevere. They persist. As the relationship between King Saul and David begins to unravel, and Jonathan's caught in the middle. Saul is jealousy of David's popularity, and he seems to be angry that his son Jonathan is allowing David to usurp him. Saul makes it clear that he's going to put David to death. And knowing that David has to go into hiding to be out of the military reach of Saul, the two of them gather and meet for a farewell. You can read these beautiful words in 1 Samuel. It says, David came out from where he had been hiding near this particular stone pile, bowed 3 times to Jonathan with his face to the ground. Both of them were in tears as they embraced each other and said goodbye, especially David. Last, Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for we have sworn loyalty. In the Lord's name. The Lord is the witness of a bond between us and our children forever. Heartbroken, they embrace and weep. David, the one who is chosen by God and has a heart for the future of Israel, is being hunted by their king. His life is at stake. His future is scary, uncertain, life on the run. But in the midst of all that, he has a friendship that perseveres and endures. We know, don't we, that it's true friends that are willing to enter into the mess of life. Adversity is often seen as the litmus test of friendship. Someone who will be there, who will just turn up. Someone who will listen, who will care. We've all heard that comment, haven't we, after we've been let down? They weren't a real friend. Heard that? When something's fallen apart, when the person you expected to be there is no longer there, they weren't a real friend. Well, the reason, the defining element of that statement is because it wasn't a friendship that endured. They walked away. A friend loves at all times. A brother is born for adversity, proverb rings. There are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend sticks closer than a brother. Sacrificial love expressed through forgiveness, through celebration, endurance. But there's more, isn't there? It's one of the beautiful things about friendship. It's kind of one of those things that the more that you dig, the more you discover. Because a friendship that is based on sacrificial love has other expressions. One of the things that I find really important in some of my closest friends is that we have friends that help to grow us. They help to grow us as people. Everyone needs a truth-telling friend, don't they? Everyone needs a truth-telling friend. The person willing to tell you when your shirt looks ridiculous. The one who says you've got spinach stuck in your teeth. Even more, the one who challenges you why you should or shouldn't quit that job. The one who asks those difficult questions. Are you too close to this girl and it might damage your marriage? We need friends who can ask hard questions. That truth can be difficult in real time, can't it? But we know it's critical for life. Friends who are there to protect you, support and guide you in what is often a difficult, challenging world. An open rebuke is better than hidden love, the proverb rings. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. True friends offer that. I wrote this down a few days ago and I've been puzzling myself about how to re-express it because I'm not happy with the way that it reads, but I like the thought behind it. But I'm going to need you to concentrate on this next two sentences. A casual friend won't risk saying something that will damage you. A real friend will not risk not saying something. It doesn't read very well. I'm not very happy with the way in which it reads. People that we only know a little bit, they're not going to risk telling you something difficult, are they? Because they're fearful about how you respond, where the relationship will head. But those friends who help to really grow us, they won't not say it because the damage or the consequence of what might be happening is more important than the risk of just losing that friendship. Your well-being is more significant. So true friends say hard things. Godly friends will tell you if you're making a serious mistake in your life, even if it stings. Because we know that we all have blind spots, don't we? And we need spiritual eyes, other eyes to help set us on the right path. They are friends that speak truth. They are friends that have difficult conversations. They are priceless. They are priceless. Some of them are peers. Some of them are mentors. There's a great example of this between Elijah and Elisha. You can read it about in 1 Kings chapter 19. Elijah has been a prophet for a while. He's been on top of the mountain, but he's crashed and burned after this amazing event that you can read about in the previous 2 or 3 chapters. He was hiding in the mountains from King Ahab, who had declared that he wanted him dead. But God calls him back into life to participate and tells him to anoint this younger man, Elisha, to succeed him as a prophet in his work. And from that point on, Elisha becomes Elijah's shadow, learns from him, is with him, and even when he's about to die, refuses just to leave his side. We all need friends who walk with us in such a close way that they help us to grow. whether that be someone our age or whether it be someone who's older than us. If I asked you to stop right now and I said, who to you in your life has that role? Who to you in your life? If you're lucky, you've probably got 3, if you're lucky. The guy who was my spiritual mentor was my spiritual mentor for me for probably from the age of 15 to about, I was about 47 when he passed away. He was, I think, 86 years old when he passed away. And I will always be grateful for his life and how it impacted me. It may be a peer. It may be someone you know that you can just be completely honest with. And they can be honest with you. Proverbs 13 says, walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. Those who are closest to us influence us. Behaviour is contagious. We rub off on each other, don't we? Paul put it this way in his letter to the Corinthians. He said, don't be fooled by those who say such things, for bad company corrupts good character. Or as it's translated in the modern Australian version, sleep with dogs, you'll get fleas. It's been researched that if you have a friend who smokes, or if you have a friend who exercises, it significantly increases the odds of what you will do. The friends we choose, the people we rub shoulders with, impact us. Good friends help to grow us, not to drag us down. Final thing I want to share with you about friendship is about friendship and intimacy. Most recent research indicates that in our average lifetime, people of our generation will make nearly 400 friendships. 400 friendships, amazing, hey? But also, we will only maintain a handful. 396 was the magic number, but only 33, 1 in 12, will stand the test of time. 1 in 5 of these, just half a dozen, is considered as a close friend. I haven't looked on my latest social media type thing, but I think I've got 800 friends. They're people I send funny videos, memes, and the occasional curated photo. It's not funny. But how many intimate friends? Intimacy is actually a really tricky word, isn't it? At times, the church, not just Croydon Hills, I'm talking about the church, has placed marriage at the focal point of all friendship and intimacy. And in our hypersexualized world, intimacy and sex have been merged together. In fact, friendship without sex seems like an anathema in many places. For example, here's a way in which people reinterpret things through the lens of the 21st century. David and Jonathan's friendship was recognised as this deep, intimate friendship. Today, numbers of people would classify it as a homosexual relationship rather than a friendship. There's no evidence for that. Just a conclusion that our modern hypersexualized society doesn't allow for an intimate friendship without sex. In 2 Samuel, it says, "Oh, how the mighty heroes have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies dead on the hills." And it's about David. "How I weep for you, my brother Jonathan. Oh, how much I loved you. Your love for me was deep, deeper than the love of women." And so people interpret that in a sexual way because people struggle to remove intimacy from sexual practice. I want to ask you this question. What happens if we don't provide for intimate, platonic friendships? What happens? The first thing I would say is it leaves people who are single floundering. A number of years ago, I was at a seminar on same-sex relationships, and the presenter, who was a person who had declared that they were same-sex attracted, said something that I had never thought of at the time. They said, if the Christian church is going to say, and they believe this was their belief system, is going to say that same-sex relationships are out of bounds. The next question needs to be this: where does the person who is same-sex attracted find deep, intimate relationships? Deep, intimate friendship. Because every single one of us, the way in which God has made us, needs deep, intimate friendships, don't we? Relationships of some sort that we can share our deepest hurts, our greatest hopes with. We all need that. And if we move intimacy to only romantic relationships, we remove the opportunity for those who are single to have those relationships. The truth is, it diminishes our understanding of friendship. Where is that place for deep, intimate, platonic friendships? The second thing I would actually say is that it places unrealistic expectations on any marriage. And we end up in this situation, well, if my partner is not the source of all I need in life relationally, then is my marriage functioning? It places an undue burden that is not meant to be met by one person, but by communities of people. Friendship needs to function alongside of, not instead of. We're complex human beings. We need more than one person. It's not an affront to a marriage or a partner that we need more than one person in our life who is a deep, intimate friend. After David had finished talking with Saul, tells us in 1 Samuel, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There's this bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. And from that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made his pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. This deep, intimate friendship. And if you're anything like me, inside you, you're kind of nodding your head, but also at times there's a sigh that rises up from within you. Is this not some sort of utopia that is unreachable? This quiet wish of, I wish. I hear what you're saying, Andrew, but I wish. Let me ask you this question. Maybe we need to reimagine what it is to be part of a church community. To reimagine what it is to be a church where these friendships of love and celebration and endurance, friendships that challenge and grow and support, they're the normative, not the unusual. And I know that in many ways our modern lifestyles work against friendship. We all say that we're over busy, overstretched, overscheduled. We've got work and classes and chores and commitments. Sometimes we think that there's not enough time to nurture these friendships. It seems like we're limited to small talk or quick text messages. Don't you think that we need to reimagine? Reimagine a church community where a Sunday gathering is a small part of what it means to be part of the church. Because the church is 24/7. It's not 10 a.m. or, in 2 weeks' time, 11 a.m. Jesus, at Christmas time, you will probably sing about the incarnate God. And I must admit, for many years, I didn't have any idea what that word incarnate means. It literally means in flesh. Carne, so if you've ever had chili con carne, it's like chili with flesh, chili with meat, right? Okay? The incarnate God means that God comes in flesh and lives among us. Isn't that the example that we are to be the church, to be among us? But too often, whether it's for fear uncertainty. Too often we leave our relationships at this level instead of taking them to here. Like I say, generally this church community is quite a friendly, welcoming community. People, when they come, we normally would welcome, and it's pretty hard for someone not to say hi to someone. I would say to us this: we can do level 1. What about level 2 of friendships? If level 1 is me shaking your hand, level 2 is saying, let's go for a coffee. Level 3 is maybe invite you to my home. Maybe we're called to reimagine and take those steps. Can I say that Jesus redefines what it is to be the church himself? One day when Jesus was teaching, he got this message that his mothers and brothers are outside and they wanted to see him. We might expect Jesus to leave at once saying, well, family first. But he does not. Instead, he answers in a way that cuts across the grain for so much of Christian culture today. He says this in Matthew 12. Jesus says, who is my mother? Who are my brothers? He points to the disciples and said, these are my mother and brothers. Anyone who does the will of my Father in heaven is my mother and brother and sister. More than family of origin, in first century Middle Eastern culture, your family of origin was where your primary loyalty was meant to lay. But Jesus' teaching is against that. It's this radical contrast to it. It's not because he's undervaluing the family. He's redefining the family. You see, listen to this. When we come to church on a Sunday, we come primarily not with, or as I put in brackets, painfully without our family. We come to our family. That's part of redefining what it is. That's what we're called to. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if we weren't just a welcoming community, but we were a next step, next level community of friendship? Can you imagine? The journalist Nicholas Kristof, in a recent op-ed in the New York Times, said this, citing warnings that have been declared by the US Surgeon General. He said that loneliness is as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, more lethal than consuming 6 alcoholic drinks a day, more dangerous for health than obesity. It's actually been researched that people do not live anywhere near as long if they are lonely. None of us argue that we need water and food and shelter for life. The truth is that we need each other. The truth is that God made us for each other. Cheap friendships are low time requirement, low entry, low impact. But the best friendships, they require love, forgiveness, perseverance. They require courage to step into those areas for difficult conversations. They are life-changing. And God calls us to them. I'd like to pray for us. For our God, we thank you that you have made us in this way to know people and to be known by people. You call us to have people who know our deepest fears and still walk alongside us. You call us to know people who understand our great hopes as they cheer and celebrate successes. Share that joy. We thank you for this gift of friendship. Father, we pray that as your people, that we would truly learn what it is to grow in our relationships. Help us to reimagine. Help us to have courage to take the next steps. Maybe even as I'm praying right now, you can picture in your eye faces people you want to deepen a relationship with. Maybe someone you need to have a difficult conversation. A friend where there needs to be forgiveness, where you need to celebrate. God, I thank you that your Spirit brings those to us in our hearts right now. Help us to have courage.